In a significant departure from his party's prevailing stance, California Governor Gavin Newsom has publicly expressed his concerns regarding the participation of transgender athletes in women's sports, labeling it deeply unfair. This bold assertion marks a pivotal moment for the Democratic Party as it navigates the contentious and rapidly evolving discourse surrounding gender identity and sports participation. Newsom's remarks, made during an 81-minute podcast discussion with right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk, underscore a growing divide within the Democratic ranks on this sensitive issue. Historically an advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, Newsom has officiated at same-sex weddings and championed various initiatives aimed at expanding rights for marginalized communities. However, as he reflects on the political landscape following the Democrats' recent electoral setbacks, his comments suggest a newfound introspection regarding the party's approach to transgender issues. During the podcast, Newsom acknowledged that the current climate surrounding transgender participation in sports is creating challenges for many within the Democratic Party. "I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that," he stated in response to Kirk's assertions about the inequities faced by cisgender female athletes competing against transgender women. This admission not only aligns Newsom with criticisms voiced by some of his party colleagues but also signals a strategic pivot as he eyes potential presidential ambitions in 2028. The implications of Newsom's comments reverberate beyond California as they reflect a broader national discourse on transgender rights and the complexities of inclusion in competitive sports. Following the Democratic loss in the 2024 elections, figures like Representative Seth Moulton have also voiced similar sentiments, emphasizing concerns about fairness for young female athletes. Moulton's remarks, made shortly after the election results, ignited a wave of backlash, signaling the fraught nature of this debate. In the current political environment where issues of gender in sports are increasingly polarizing, Newsom's statements may resonate with a segment of voters who feel that the rights of female athletes are being overshadowed by the push for inclusivity. A recent Pew Research survey indicated that a significant majority, approximately 66% of Americans, support banning biological males from competing in women's sports. This statistic highlights a potential disconnect between party leadership and public sentiment, particularly among moderate Democrats and independents. Moreover, Newsom's critique of the effectiveness of traditional campaign strategies in addressing these issues is notable. He reflected on the impact of a campaign advertisement by former President Trump that ridiculed then Vice President Kamala Harris's stance on gender identity, acknowledging its devastating effect on voter perceptions. "It was devastating," he remarked, pointing to the need for a more nuanced approach to engage voters on contentious topics. As the political landscape continues to evolve, the Democratic Party faces the challenge of balancing its progressive ideals with the diverse views of its constituents. Newsom's comments could signal a shift toward a more centrist position on transgender issues, one that might seek to bridge the gap between advocacy for LGBTQ+ rights and the concerns of cisgender women in sports. In the coming months, as the 2028 presidential race heats up, it will be critical to observe how these discussions unfold within the Democratic Party. Newsom's willingness to engage with opposing viewpoints, as evidenced by his podcast with Kirk, may set a precedent for how Democratic leaders navigate the complexities of identity politics in an increasingly polarized environment. The stakes are high, and the outcomes will likely shape the party's identity and electoral strategy for years to come. In a revealing survey conducted by Gallup, a significant 66% of Americans expressed a desire for the United States to play a leading or major role in addressing international challenges. This figure reflects a noteworthy trend in public opinion that is shaped by the current geopolitical landscape as well as the administration's foreign policy initiatives. The findings, released on March 6, 2025, indicate that while the sentiment for a robust American presence on the global stage remains strong, it has notably decreased compared to the early 2000s, when the average support for such engagement hovered around 75%. The Gallup survey, which was conducted between February 3 and 16, coincided with ongoing U.S. diplomatic efforts regarding the conflicts in Israel and Ukraine. Notably, the poll results show that 19% of respondents support a leading role for the U.S., while 47% favor a major role. Conversely, 28% believe the U.S. should adopt a more minor role in world affairs and just 3% advocate for no involvement at all. Political affiliation plays a crucial role in shaping these views. A considerable majority of Democrats 75% and Republicans 71% agree on the necessity of a leading or major role for the U.S. in international matters. However, political independents display a notable reticence, with only 58% supporting significant U.S. engagement, suggesting a growing divergence in outlook among the different political affiliations. This shift is particularly pronounced when comparing current sentiments to data from 2001 to 2009, where 83% of Republicans and 70% of independents favored a strong U.S. presence. Despite the prevailing belief in the U.S. military's dominance, 56% of Americans perceive it as the world's top military force. Only 26% consider the U.S. to have the leading economy, revealing a stark contrast in perceptions of military versus economic strength. Furthermore, Americans' satisfaction with the U.S. position in the world is low. Only 39% express contentment with how the country is perceived internationally, a sentiment that has been historically rare and is influenced significantly by the party of the sitting president. The poll highlights a critical challenge for the current administration as President Donald Trump navigates complex diplomatic waters while seeking to reassure a public that feels increasingly dissatisfied with the nation's global standing. Notably, 44% of respondents believe that international leaders respect Trump, a significant uptick from his first term, yet a sizable 54% feel the U.S. is viewed unfavorably abroad. This juxtaposition of military strength and economic perception may further complicate the administration's efforts to foster a favorable international image while addressing domestic concerns. Amid this backdrop, the political climate remains charged, as evidenced by recent events in Congress. Democratic Representative Al Green made headlines for his vocal protest during President Trump's address to Congress, which he characterized as a heartfelt response to the looming threats against Medicaid. Green's disruption underscores the growing tensions within Congress and reflects broader concerns among Democrats regarding healthcare reform and social safety nets, issues that resonate deeply with many Americans. As the U.S. grapples with these multifaceted challenges, both at home and abroad, the Gallup findings suggest a critical need for the administration to recalibrate its foreign policy approach while addressing domestic discontent. The ongoing conflicts in Israel and Ukraine, along with the internal discourse on healthcare, will likely shape public sentiment as the nation moves forward. Looking ahead, how the administration navigates these dynamics may very well influence not only its standing with the American public but also its role in the increasingly complex tapestry of global affairs. In a significant development concerning the landscape of women's sports, Bishops Robert E. Barron and David M. O'Connell of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops (USCCB) have voiced their disappointment following the U.S. Senate's decision to block progress on the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. This legislation, which previously passed in the House, aims to prevent federally funded sports programs from allowing male students to participate in athletic events designated for women and girls, a move the bishops argue is essential for ensuring fairness and safety in women's sports. In their statement, the bishops emphasized the legislation's alignment with the Catholic Church's teachings on the dignity of all individuals, asserting this legislation would ensure a level playing field for women and girls to compete in fairness and safety with other females. They warned that an ideological approach that prioritizes personal identity over biological reality could undermine the integrity of sports and educational formation. The bishops reiterated their support for the act, calling on female athletes across the nation to advocate for fairness and equality within their sports. The failed procedural vote in the Senate has elicited strong reactions from various advocacy groups and supporters of the legislation, highlighting a broader cultural and political debate about gender identity and its implications for women's sports. As Bishop Barron and Bishop O'Connell continue to champion the cause, the discourse surrounding this issue is expected to intensify, especially as it intersects with ongoing discussions about Title IX and its interpretation in contemporary society. Meanwhile, in the realm of labor policy, the Senate Health, Education, Labor and Pensions Help Committee has advanced the nomination of Keith Sonderling for Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Labor. The committee's vote was narrowly passed with a tally of 12 to 11, reflecting the contentious nature of labor issues in today's political climate. During the session, committee chair Senator Bill Cassidy praised Sonderling for his commitment to supporting independent workers and fostering economic growth, citing his previous role in establishing labor policies during the Trump administration. As the nomination moves to the Senate floor for a final vote, it signals a potential shift in labor policy direction under the Biden administration, particularly regarding the treatment of independent contractors and regulatory clarity for employers. Senator Cassidy's remarks highlighted the urgency for a pro-worker agenda that aims to empower individuals while ensuring they can provide for their families. In a separate yet equally noteworthy event, 2 high school students from Massachusetts are participating in the annual U.S. Senate Youth Program in Washington, D.C. This program, funded by the Hearst Foundations, offers students a unique opportunity to engage directly with government officials and gain insights into public service. The participants will also receive $10,000 scholarships, enhancing the initiative's appeal. Betty Nguyen from Boston Latin and Evan Coate from Tyngsboro High School have expressed their enthusiasm and the importance of understanding diverse perspectives in governance. Nguyen articulated the value of listening to different voices, while Coate reflected on the significance of public service as a calling rather than a quest for power. As these distinct narratives unfold, they reflect a broader societal engagement with pressing issues such as gender equity in sports, labor rights, and the importance of civic education among youth. The future developments in these areas will likely continue to shape discussions about fairness, representation, and advocacy in America. In a striking display of dissent, Representative Al Green, a Democrat from Texas, was officially censured by the House of Representatives on March 6, 2025, following his interruption of President Donald Trump's address to Congress 2 days prior. The vote, which concluded with a tally of 224 to 198, marked Green as the 28th lawmaker in history to face such a reprimand. A formal acknowledgement of misconduct that stops short of expulsion. This incident has reignited discussions around decorum in Congress and the evolving strategies of the Democratic Party as they navigate opposition to the Trump administration. During Trump's lengthy address, which focused on his legislative agenda and touted his electoral mandate, Green vocally protested, asserting that the president lacked the authority to cut Medicaid. His shouts of "You do not have a mandate" were met with immediate reprimands from House Speaker Mike Johnson, who called for order as Green continued his outburst. Ultimately, the situation escalated to the point where Green was escorted from the chamber, an event that not only highlighted the tensions within Congress but also underscored the growing divisiveness in American politics. The censure resolution was introduced by Republican Representative Dan Newhouse of Washington, and notably it garnered bipartisan support, with 10 Democrats voting alongside their Republican colleagues. This alignment underscores a complex landscape within the Democratic Party where differing views on how to oppose Trump continue to emerge. While some members advocate for a dignified presence, others like Green argue for more direct action and vocal opposition. "I think that on some questions of conscience, you have to be willing to suffer the consequences," Green stated, reaffirming his commitment to his constituents and the issues he champions, particularly concerning healthcare. The aftermath of Green's actions has prompted a wider discussion among Democrats about their approach to confronting the Trump administration. Party leaders, including Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, have emphasized maintaining decorum in the House, potentially aiming to focus public attention on policy rather than theatrics. Yet the pressure from constituents for more visible resistance is palpable, leading to a schism in tactics. Representative Tom Suozzi of New York articulated this divide, suggesting that both parties should hold themselves to consistent standards and lamenting the effectiveness of current strategies. Republicans on their part framed Green's actions as a breach of legislative decorum. Many, including Representative Doug LaMalfa, expressed disappointment over the disruption, advocating for a respectful discourse regardless of political disagreements. On the other hand, Democrats like Representative Jim McGovern pointed out perceived hypocrisy, recalling instances when Republican members heckled President Biden without facing similar repercussions. As the political climate continues to evolve, the implications of this censure extend beyond Green's individual actions. The House Freedom Caucus has indicated plans to pursue further resolutions targeting Green, including efforts to remove him from the House Financial Services Committee. This move signifies the ongoing friction within Congress and the potential for further escalations in partisan tensions. Green's legacy as a civil rights advocate and his long-standing commitment to social justice issues have defined his tenure in Congress. He has been a persistent voice for marginalized communities, and his recent protest is a continuation of that advocacy. As he navigates the consequences of his actions, Green remains steadfast in his conviction, stating, "I would do it again." In the coming weeks, as Congress continues to grapple with the fallout from this incident, it will be crucial to observe how both parties adapt their strategies in an increasingly polarized environment. The resonance of Green's protest might well signal a shift in how Democrats choose to engage with the Trump administration moving forward, potentially reshaping the narrative in a critical election year. In a significant ruling that underscores the ongoing tensions between the judicial system and executive power, the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld a lower court's decision mandating the Trump administration to fulfill its financial obligations to foreign aid contractors. This ruling, delivered by a narrow 5-4 margin, has far-reaching implications for the future of U.S. foreign aid and the regulatory authority of the courts over executive actions. The case originated from a legal challenge brought by two prominent foreign aid contractors, the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition and the Global Health Council, against the Trump administration's abrupt cessation of funding for foreign aid initiatives managed by the U.S. Agency for International Development (USAID) and the State Department. The contractors argued that the funding cuts not only jeopardized critical health programs but also violated existing agreements that required payment for completed work totaling approximately $2 billion. Federal Judge Amir Ali, appointed by President Biden, initially issued a temporary restraining order allowing the continuation of foreign aid funding while he reviewed the case. Following the administration's alleged non-compliance with this order, Judge Ali ordered the immediate payment to contractors for work already completed. In response, the Trump administration sought intervention from the Supreme Court, which ultimately declined to overturn Judge Ali's ruling. The implications of this Supreme Court decision are multifaceted. Chief Justice John Roberts, along with Justices Amy Coney Barrett, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, formed the majority, signaling a rare bipartisan alignment within the court. Their ensigned order not only affirmed the lower court's authority but also provided guidance on how to ensure compliance with the ruling, emphasizing the necessity of clear and feasible timelines for government obligations. Conversely, the dissenting opinion led by Justice Samuel Alito raised concerns about the potential overreach of a single district court judge in compelling the government to disburse taxpayer dollars. Alito's remarks reflect a broader apprehension among some justices regarding the balance of power between the judiciary and the executive branch, particularly in cases involving substantial public funds. As this legal battle unfolds, the ruling may set a precedent for future cases involving executive power and foreign aid funding. The Supreme Court's decision highlights the judiciary's role in maintaining checks and balances, especially as the Trump administration's policies continue to face scrutiny in the courts. Looking ahead, the implications of this ruling may resonate throughout the year as additional cases concerning executive actions are expected to reach the Supreme Court. With the current court's composition and the contentious political landscape, the outcomes of these cases will likely shape the future of U.S. governance and its approach to foreign relations. The ongoing dialogue between the branches of government suggests that judicial oversight will remain a critical component in the administration of U.S. foreign aid and policy.